Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Thought I'd give you a different backdrop than my normal videos. These are my Wisdom Audio Adrenalines in my main room. You probably noticed though why I don't film in here and why I don't use this as my main reference, even though it's awesome speakers, because it's still not treated properly. Goes back to one of the key takeaways from Axpona and that Tiger Fox room that I featured in my previous video, one of the coolest things, and probably should fit in this video as well, which I'm titling My Favorite Things at the Show. How important the room is compared to the gear. So anyway, but I thought I'd give you a little change up here. Let's see if we can record this without having the dogs barking and any other distractions. So really what I wanted to cover today, it's impossible to cover the best of the show because I didn't hear every room. It's impossible for me to even include all of my favorites in one video without it being an hour long, because there were so many things that were great at this show that I enjoyed. So what I wanted to do in this video is mainly restricted to isolated rooms that are off the beaten path in terms of their technology, not the typical point source box speaker that is prevalent, really good, and like I said, lots of great rooms, and maybe I'll have a separate video which ones are my favorite in that genre. But I wanted to share with you in this my favorites in terms of what was really good about the show is that maybe it's because 2 years without a show, we saw a lot of new technology or expansion of things that we only saw in certain areas before, like omnidirectivity, the Tiger Fox, the Janszen, and then of course MBLs. We saw the bays. So we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of DSP be implemented more and more. And that was encouraging. So I want to focus on those things that are a little bit more fresh to the industry and growing versus the normal point source box. Which one is the best? They all were pretty good. I didn't, like I said in the prior video, weren't any bad rooms per se. But also, when I'm talking about favorites, my favorite thing about going to the shows is actually meeting the people, meeting many of you guys, meeting manufacturers. When you meet guys like Charles Kirmuss, JR with Wally Tools, and some of these great rooms, the Muraudio guys are really great. Malborg, very friendly on their very first show. You want to root for those guys. Back in Florida, I didn't go to the Gishelli room this year, but those are great family-run business. Those are the kind of people you want to support. I got to meet the guys at Spatial Audio. Those are great guys too. It's really very fun and involving. Much more than just gear when you go to these shows, if you can interact and socialize, and that's what I've grown to appreciate. And also, on top of a lot of these people that I mentioned being great guys, they are great resources. Like JR, I would like to hang out with him on a general basis, great guy, but the fact that he knows so much, when you find people that you know a lot more than you or have expertise in a certain area, that's really valuable and fun in the hobby to be able to leverage that connection and talk to them. JR, and I mentioned Charles Kirmuss, just a plethora of knowledge. We went to dinner with him. The things that he's invented in his life and the things he's done just made Dave and I like, what can we talk about? It's just amazing. So again, shout out to those guys. And really another thing I will say is that the rooms that were very accommodating to press, and I'm not a big press. I'm not like Stereophile or the Absolute Sound. So, and some people don't even know me. It was encouraging that some actually did. But I like being kind of under the radar and seeing how they treat a regular person. And again, props to people that were playing. Dave Husto's USB stick went through the trouble. In a lot of cases, it's not easy to download it, take time from the show, all the other things going on. So shout out to those rooms, and many of those are going to be on this list, my favorite things to show, because we were able to benchmark a song that we knew well, and all of them performed well. And even rooms like Akora, I'll give a special shout out to them. He came up to me and asked me if I wanted to play anything, and that's very rare, you know. Now, I know you guys like drama, and 99.999% of everybody I met there was great. Were there any things that were negative, maybe should have been in my disappointing? I will share this story, again, piggybacking on the positive aspect. The very first room I ever went into at the show was before 9 a.m. on the first day, before the show even opened. The Tiger Fox, they were inviting people through email that were pressed to go early. So I showed up there, and I was there with a writer from the Chicago Tribune. And obviously, I was more than happy to leave and let him do the private demo on his own. He's a big press. I'm just a little press. Guy was so nice. He's like, no. And actually, the guy running the room was like, yeah, can you come back in 30 minutes when we're finished? No problem at all. But he was like, no, he's part of the press. Let him watch me, film me, all this stuff. And I had that as my very first video to share with you guys. But Google sabotaged it because one of the songs I guess he had chosen to play is one that Google blocks totally. Again, I don't get any money even when there's a regular song in there that they allow. But then some of them, they just block my video totally because they say they don't want that song on YouTube, period. So that was a positive. But I will, the 0.001% thing that didn't resonate well with me is that when I went back the next day with Jose and to the Tiger Fox room, I went early to give them a chance where we wouldn't be bothering anybody and could film real good. But the poor guy was having to scramble. One of the big magazine writers was going to come in for a demo and demanded a certain song be played for his demo. And the guy had tons of tracks. It's an $85 speaker with a little surround. It's not for traditional audiophiles. The guy must have done no research in advance and demanding that this guy download and find this track. And it just, that level of pretentiousness is the 0.001% that you sometimes encounter. That's the negative. But to have a member of the Chicago Tribune treat me like a fellow member of the press, thumbs up to him. I'd like to see how he wrote his article on the Tiger Fox, because quite frankly, I videoed the whole thing. Sorry I couldn't share it with you. He was really impressed. It took him a while to even get up out of there for me to even have my turn. He enjoyed it. And that's really what the ultimate litmus test is if you stay in the room and want to keep listening. Those are the subliminal things that you can't control, and some of the things that I noticed with these rooms I'm going to mention. People weren't moving around as much, and whatnot. And the other, let me start getting into some of the rooms now. The ultimate litmus test, even among those things I just mentioned, is if somebody buys the room or buys the equipment. And while I didn't buy anything this time, although I'm very much considering how I can work that Tiger Fox into my room or my daughter's room or something like that, the one thing that was bought by my friends, my friend went into the Estelon room. He already had the smaller. He bought those bigger Forzas. The one, and if you go into the video I did, shot with them, that's actually when they were playing Tin Pan Alley at first, and then the Heart Player. That's my first time hearing the Forzas, and yeah, they definitely are better than the smaller YGs. And I even have some interviews on my channel, if you go back, with the owner, the CEO of Estelon. Great 3-part interview in conjunction with the guys at 3MA who represent them here in Houston. So watch that. She's a great knowledge and great family business. I'm glad that they had a successful show, at least sold one pair for sure. And so that's the ultimate litmus test. So while I didn't buy the Forzas, and maybe they don't resonate with me as much as it did with my friend who can afford them and bought them, that's the ultimate litmus test. So I want to share with you that when somebody puts down money, that's the ultimate thumbs up, best of. Nobody else can really claim that unless they put out the money and buy the gear. The other rooms, though, for me that stood out, that were innovative, obviously I spent a lot of time with that Aries Cerat because I'm trying to understand how that thing is working. When I went in, I was definitely prejudiced against it. I'm like, what the hell? This is going to be a gimmick. So, sat down, it's like, whoa. What is it? Something unique about it. Again, it's not the perfect room. Not everything about the sound was perfect and better than anything I have at home, but there were certain aspects you could pick out. It's like, how is it doing that? It's really good. It's actually one of the best. When I did those 3 reference tracks, you can't really tell from my video, the sound was distorting and clipping, but some aspects may come through, but it was extremely good, and in some aspects was the best I've heard with one of those songs with the male vocals of Chris Stapleton. So Aries Cerat deserves credit, but I'm going to be going visit the distributor in that room in a month, so I'll talk more about that in the future as I learn more. The other one that was exciting, I mentioned this in my preview video, and I was excited to see them back in North America, is Cabasse. I've loved that big sphere. They didn't have the big one. They had the smaller one, which is more practical and probably in more people's budget range, although all of these things are really for multimillionaires for the most part. But that speaker is very innovative and more advanced than what I recall, or maybe they've added this. The tri-coaxial circular sphere cabinet is actually theoretically probably a superior type cabinet for resonant purposes. And then this tri-coaxial driver complement, kind of a point source that will make off axis, I think, a lot better. That's all scientifically probably got merit and sounds good. But also the fact that the stand has the cabling running down to the base, which is actually what houses the electronics for active. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You would never know your electronics are at the base of your speaker and the wires are invisible. And also on the speaker itself, there is a DSP kind of mic or module that helps you measure your room, at least on the bass frequencies, if I remember the presentation correctly. Cabasse is killing it in terms of advancing, doing something out of the box, something innovative. Sounded great. I wasn't in the sweet spot, so I can't say it was the best thing I heard. Everything I heard was impressive from being off axis. And again, I'm intrigued by that and learning more and would love to spend more time in the future. Hopefully they'll be at more shows. Cabasse gets my thumbs up as one of the favorite rooms, innovative and fun. Another one that fulfilled a lifelong, well, not a lifelong dream, but one thing that I've been wanting to see for a long time. For those that watch me build the GR Research and Extremes, one of the things that I always wanted to do from the start, but just it didn't make practical sense, was to build the cabinet instead of out of MDF, out of Panzerholz. Reason being, when you get long, huge runs of MDF, it starts to warp. And even I had shipping damage on the first one because it comes in a huge, well packed, but you know how UPS does, and it cracked. And there's a lot cut out of that MDF to make it less firm than a solid piece of MDF. And also resonances. MDF is good, very good, in fact. And then when you add the no-res, it's very good. Still not ultimate. It's not like the level of a Rockport YG cabinet construction. So I always knew that going in and thought, man, maybe the next thing to take it to that next level would be to do it in Panzerholz. Well, Linkwitz, if you watch that video, the Linkwitz Riley crossover, the guy had made a speaker. And it's an open baffle speaker, which is right up my alley. I like that presentation. And it uses the bass module similar to Danny's sub modules, similar. And man, I was loving what I heard in that room. And then they do DSP, and they have a lot of active crossover, things that all fit within my innovative trend that I hope the industry continues going into. But then when he said that the baffle was made of Panzerholz, whoa, then the coolness of the room went up even more, because I know with extended experience with that speaker on different tracks, different volumes, that Panzerholz will pay off in maybe minor, but you know, when you get to the neurotic level of audiophiles nowadays, you're just looking for that extra little 5% here or there. And so a Panzerholz baffle, open baffle, is something I've always wanted to see. Kaiser does it in a point source box speaker, and I haven't even heard the Kaiser Panzerholz speaker, but the fact that Linkwitz did that, and it's something I've always thought would be killer to see in a product, it immediately, I knew it was going to make my favorites of the show. And again, the sound was great for a small room like that. It'll sound better in a better room, but hopefully you got a chance to check that out. Along those same lines, in the DSP innovative realm, Eikon. Now, I've heard the Eikon and seen Eikon in previous shows. I didn't have extended chance to demo them and get the actual presentation. I was very impressed with the guys running that room, and the design of the bigger one, the sleek Eikon, that is a really cool looking speaker, right up there with the coolest speakers I saw, coolest things I saw in terms of my taste. It's very sleek and cool form factor, really could fit in most decors, from a condo to mansion. And again, it's active, doesn't have a lot of passive crossover parts or anything. So, and then it has a lot of DSP technology that's more than just frequency response. You really need to go to Eikon and understand what they're doing a little bit differently. It's very similar to the legacy and the wavelet technology. So that, again, is something that can help. If you apply it right, there's almost no way it can't improve almost any listening room you put it into. So the ceiling, while, when I was there, they were playing it. Actually, that was one room where they were playing the music kind of too low for me to really test the speaker. But that speaker, I know, in a great environment, and making DSP just add that little extra, would be a phenomenal sounding, high ceiling from that. Kudos to Eikon making my favorites really easily. Another one, let me go to a budget one. I did mention Polk, so I'm not going to mention them again. But Polk, up and down their line, let me just tell you, I will talk about Polk again. Let me just go ahead and tell you. I had Paradigm bookshelf speakers and I had Polk bookshelf speakers. Paradigm's great speakers. Paradigm makes good bookshelf speakers. I don't have them anymore. I kept the Polks. I love what Polk is doing. Polk bookshelves and all the way up, the L800 is a speaker you want to audition if you ever get the chance. It's just like revolutionary in terms of, actually it's kind of what I was expecting from Bays or the Janszen, which will be on my list as well. The omnidirectional, but it's not quite omnidirectional, but this SDA and technology and interaural crosstalk, eliminating that, gives me what I really like, almost like unlimited soundstage and immersion, but a front channel presentation, unlike what headphones kind of doesn't give you that level. So Polk is killer. But the other budget speaker that I saw that I would buy and consider, I might even build one for the channel as a video series, is this PlexiBox that was in the Audiokinesis and Atmosphere room. And again, kudos to Atmosphere for coming out with a Class D amp and changing their whole paradigm from being OTLs. You're seeing a progression in the hobby. And I love seeing manufacturers that aren't, dogmatically, going to stick with old technology, passive parts and all this stuff, when there are superior ways now to do things than what just wasn't available back then. And so the commitment to see Ralph Karsten do a Class D amp, for those that have been long in the business, did you ever think that would happen? It happened. It sounds great. But the real thing that stood out to me even more so in that room was how well the PlexiBox, just an open baffle box that you can put together for about $400 or buy from PlexiBox. Talk to the guy briefly in the video if you want to watch. The biggest cost is going to be the driver. The single driver Voxative was like $2,500, but you can do different ones if you want, and talk to them about what other options at different budget ranges. But man, that sounded great, because also he had the Audiokinesis Swarm subwoofers, and you probably didn't even notice when I was filming in that room. The subs were in the corners, small, gave that good bass reinforcement that single driver speakers never really wow me. They don't ever reach that level of being true reference. But when you can mate them well and you've got a really high quality Voxative driver like they did, it worked and sounded great, at least with the music we're playing. I think, and if I pushed it with different types of genres of music, maybe I would find more warts. But it was plenty good enough on first blush for me to put it in my favorites, and something that if you're on a budget, something to try, with the caveat that, I haven't tried enough music and different volumes to give it 100% validation, but something I would be interested in trying and learning more. PlexiBox, Audiokinesis Swarm, all of that room was great. I'm going to jump to my favorite room. I'm going to say my favorite room of all to last. But one of my close to favorites was going into the Akora room, because now I'm going to talk about something that, other than just the metrics of the sound or even technology, kind of impresses me. It's about the total experience when I go into that room. We're humans. We want to have a great experience, and at least I give weight to that. If I feel like they're playing great music, the vibe there is good, the people running the room are good, everything about that influences my perception. And so Akora may not be the best speaker I heard totally at the show, But that room, I enjoyed it so much being in there. It's always impressing me now. It's deserving of all the praise it's getting. It's always been put in a much bigger room than you think it can, but it does fine. We played Dave's track, and I'll give Akora credit versus every other manufacturer I saw. They were the one that came up to me and asked me what I wanted to play, and then we offered the USB stick from Dave with his recording that he's familiar with, and they took the time in a big room with lots of other people there to load that on their disc and play it for us. Now, it was louder than probably it should have been, and Dave did say turn it down, and he did turn it down. So that, at that point, it's our fault. We didn't tell him to turn it down a little bit more, but it was plenty good enough to hear the potential of those speakers and know that this speaker is definitely punching up there with all the other speakers on that row and deserve to be every bit in those big conference rooms. And on top of that, in that room is United Home Audio with that amazing tape deck. That guy's a great guy, right up there with JR and Charles Kirmuss, the guys I was mentioning, all these guys. He deserves credit. Kind of great guy, number one, you would want to hang out and talk to. He actually grew up in the same town I did, but has great taste in music, great expertise, and makes a product that is a dream, you know, one of my dream products to own, his tape deck. So $100,000, but so not something I can just go over there and justify buying, but great product, great room, thumbs up to Acora for playing our track, and excellent job now on multiple shows. So it's kind of a multiple cumulative award I'm giving them on favorites. Definitely one of the ones I want to point out, because if you see them at a show, don't skip the Acora room. The other one, that great guys now on 2 occasions, although I have seen them in the past and heard them in the past, and really wasn't that wowed in the past with the other models that they had way well back in the past. But Muraudio, man, now 2 times, I've been extremely impressed with that. And again, my first intuition is like, Martin Logan-ish with the pistonic drivers and electrostatics. Does have some attractive qualities with certain music, but it never really, I had Martin Logan's in the past. I kind of knew the warts after time. And so I don't even have a bias towards it other than it is open baffle. And the key thing with the Muraudio is how well they integrate the electrostatic with those drivers. And then that electrostatic does cover a wide range of frequencies such that you don't get that crossover coloration, that 3 different type of drivers commingling, playing. Even if the crossovers are done well and gives you a flat response, they're still co-playing certain frequencies. So when you get certain music, there is a difference between the purity of that electrostatic playing everything versus multiple drivers covering that critical range. So the purity of the Muraudio playing Dave's tracks was exceptional. And that was another room where they took the time to download the USB stick, played the songs. Super thumbs up to those guys. Can't say enough about them. And relatively modest front end gear, a Hegel integrated amp was driving that just fine. So definitely check them out. 2 thumbs up on 2 shows now from Muraudio. Now I'll get to my favorite room, period. And people are going to say, no surprise, you always love MBL, MBL, MBL. I love MBL. I think it's the best brand in the world, top to bottom. They can do everything. But like I was just saying, I'm getting into the total experience realm. And this experience with MBL is actually better than any other experience I've had with MBL. Reason being, Jeremy, the distributor, was just killing it with, number one, music selection, the right volume, and then he picked the right speakers for the right room. Like I said in the prior videos, some manufacturers have to make that trade-off. Do they bring their oversized one that's going to overload the room, or they bring the smaller one that's not going to show off their technology? MBL technology trickles down very well. And I got to say, of all the people I talked to that loved MBL room, they were bragging about that small room where, again, he had 2 rooms, a small room and a bigger room. And the smaller MBLs fit perfectly for that size room. Kudos to him for picking that. They were bragging more about that than anything. People were really wild about the small MBLs. And then the bigger 101Es, I loved That was the best presentation at a show of the 101Es I've ever heard. It was perfectly set up in that room, immersive. If you wanted to be more immersive, you sit on the first row. If you're more interested in kind of pinpointing and identifying things in a more traditional setting, you sit further back. It's a very versatile speaker. But again, what took it over the top for me, I don't know if Jeremy knew that Greg Brown, Brand New Dodge, Brand New 64 Dodge is one of my favorite songs. Maybe he saw that on one of my channel videos or whatever, but when he played that, you noticed I was about to leave the room, I sat back down. But and so that was killer that he played that. That's the first time I've heard that song at a show. Awesome. Love that song, love Greg Brown. If you haven't checked that out, maybe you have the same taste as me, check it out. But he played other cool stuff too. Wasn't afraid to play Billie Eilish Bad Guy. You notice how many rooms will never play that because it's gonna make their drivers seem, especially their bass drivers, seem not so good, and resonances in the room, all kinds of issues. He wasn't afraid, and if you notice what I did in that video, here's another killer thing that he did. I was playing I was recording Billie Eilish Bad Guy on the big system. The other system was synced playing the same song as the big system, which is another kudos to being able to do that. How many shows in the past we didn't even have the technology to do that? Now we can play, and I was able to go in during the middle of the song and compare real time one song on the 101Es at the same time in that smaller room on the smaller MBLs. Amazing, well set up, everything was thought out. Playing that, the Metallica cover he played, the quartet, everything he played in that room just resonated with me, made the experience phenomenal. I titled that video, The Best 10 Minutes at the Show. MBL again even exceeded my expectations with this room, and that time I spent in there. Again, your experience may be different, your taste may be different whenever you were in there, but if that company and that distributor Jeremy thinks of everything really well, and he did it top notch again this show. So kudos to him for kind of being my favorite 10 minutes of the show. Again, I did buy the Stax SR9000. I'm still waiting for those on the headphone side, and I still haven't decided on amps, but I did look at the LTA amp, which is now a competitor. I did listen to the Woo. That's the only other things that on my front that I'm considering buying, other than maybe doing that PlexiBox if I can talk to the guy, and maybe doing a build video series for you guys and putting that together and just seeing how that sounds. I'm very interested in that, as well as the Tiger Fox if I can figure out. The only thing with the Tiger Fox, I'll say this real quick. I was trying to figure out how I could do it in my main rig where I do some actual gaming and work, and I could do that. But it does curve around a little bit too much in the front, such that once you put the two speakers there, there's really no room for a monitor. So your monitor has to be, so the audio visual aspect of using Tiger Fox would be a little more, you have to think of that before you buy it, challenging. But in terms of a sanctuary, creating a dedicated listening room where you don't have a dedicated listening room now, all you do is get that 30 seconds, you put up your dedicated listening room and you listen to music like most people do, just in their normal listening room. You've got a very cool experience that, again, will be hard to get up from listening to your tunes for the first time. $500. Okay, guys, give it a shot if you weren't able to check it out live. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. I'm still going to have plenty more, some reference tracks from the show. I'm going to do that video. And as I also mentioned, when I come back from the show and I hear things at the show that sound better in certain areas than what I have at home on a certain song, I'll come home and tweak my DSP and see how I can get it to change and maybe get to that level of performance. So watch me do that in a future video and see how successful I am. All right, sign up, subscribe, guys, and I'll see you back here soon.